Hello everyone, today we're going to take a look at the Laowa 100mm f2.8 two-time macro lens. So stay tuned. Hello everyone, I'm Constantine with Eye on Photography. Welcome to my macro photography channel where I make little things a big deal. Quick shout out to all my subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing to my channels. I hope you continue to like these videos. If you're new to my channel, please click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell so you get notified of future videos. I have to tell you, I have the coolest mother in the world. She's been a strong influence in my life and has raised me very well. She's given me my sense of equality and judgment and fairness. There are two of us, myself and my brother, who is 10 years younger than I am. He races cars as well as my mother. My mother's 73 years old. She still loves racing cars. This is one of the things that makes her one of the coolest mothers in the world. The other thing is she often helps my brother out with various things on his cars. She will give him $100 for tires or this, that, and the other. She doesn't always get an opportunity to help me out. And I, quite frankly, I'm okay with that. It's not really a big deal for me. I love my brother. He's a great guy. I support him when I can. And I honestly don't think anything of it. My mother does like to be as fair as possible to us both. And a couple weeks ago, I did my video on different macro lens choices that you can look at as a beginning macro photographer. At the end of the video, I suggested the lens that I want was the Laowa 100mm 2.8 macro lens. Well, my mother essentially paid me a chunk of money to contribute to buying that lens. And here it is. I just received this yesterday. I haven't even opened it yet. So we're going to unbox and try it out today. So here we go. That's always important to have a good pocket knife on you. So you can open packages you get in the mail, play with new toys. There it is. And just raise this up a little bit more so you can actually see it and get it out of the light so it's not quite so blinding. Let's see where, oh look, there's a nice easy spot in this right there. So shortly after I put that video together, my mother gave me some money to help contribute to purchasing this lens. I ordered it virtually right away. Around the same time, Stewart Wood was doing his video on this lens, though the version for the Canon EOS R, because they are a slightly different mount and they have actually some slightly different features. So I ordered it right away and it arrived here just yesterday. Comes in a very nice little box here, all nice and sealed and very nicely presented. Part of the box, of course, is all the information. And let's just make sure there's nothing else in here. I don't think there is. And we'll just put that aside. So first things first, it does come with a lens hood, which is good if you're outside doing macro photography and you have some direct sunlight which could glare off the lens. You can put the lens hood on and reduce that glare, and that will focus the light only on the macro subject. I'm just going to put this back on. It came off in transport here. All right, so here is the lens. Now this particular lens is for the Canon EF mount series of cameras. So that includes cameras in their lower end line and their mid-range line, as well as their full frame line. So it fits the full gamut of Canon cameras. The exception being, of course, that they have a specific version of this lens for the Canon mirrorless EOS R series cameras. And the features on them are slightly different. First thing to note is this lens is relatively heavy. It has got a metal structure to it, so it's very solid. Has some very smooth focusing mechanisms, which goes from infinity all the way to 2x macro, which is very, very cool. The aperture on this is actually controlled by the camera. Some versions of this lens for different cameras actually still use a manual aperture. One of the things that they did for the Canon EOS R mount is that they added a manual aperture ring. Now this lens comes with a UV filter on it, here on the end. .67mm thread. One of the reasons for the filter is if you take a look inside, you will see that there is a bit of space here between the outside rim of the lens and the internal workings. That means that dust and whatnot can actually get in there, which you don't want to have happen. So this UV filter actually protects that. A lot of photographer reviews have complained a little bit about that feature, hoping that Laowa does make that change in the future so that there is no need for the UV on the end. This lens features an apochromatic characteristic which reduces chromatic aberration. If you don't know what chromatic aberration is, or CA, it is a little bit of purple fringing that you often get on some images, particularly when there's high and low contrast objects side by side. You'll get a little bit of purple fringing. This lens actually eliminates that problem, which can be an issue when you're dealing with macro subjects. So we're going to try this lens out on my camera right over here. So here we are at with my macro lighting frame here, and I've got things set up. I have some, as well as a fantastic mother, I have some very fantastic friends. A wonderful friend of mine by the name of Liz Hall loaned to me a couple of insects that she found, which were dead when she found them. So they all had natural deaths. Nothing was injured to try and do this tonight. She also lent me a giant dandelion stem to actually put things on. And I say giant because one of the seeds is almost as big as a regular dandelion clock. So it's quite massive. I'm not quite sure where she found that, but it's pretty impressive. And she's allowed me to take a couple of the larger seeds off to use for a couple future shoots, so do pay attention to my Instagram to look for those. But she's got a bumblebee here that she's provided for the purposes of this shot. I've placed a flash up top, set at 1/128th power, and with a softbox on it. I've placed a flash here to the left of the camera, also at 1/128th power, directing a little bit more at my subject. So my bee here, which you'll probably have a very hard time seeing on this camera, is sitting right here just on top of the dandelion seeds, and he's just kind of nestled right in. I've pre-focused the camera at 1:1. Now the Laowa lens is a manual focus lens, So there is no autofocus on it. You have to manually adjust the camera forward and backward to get your focus. The minimum focusing distance, according to the specifications, is 24.7 centimeters at 2x macro. So what the minimum focusing distance is the distance between your subject and your camera sensor. So not the lens, but inside where the camera sensor is. That is how that is calculated. So as you can see, I probably actually have a lens to subject focusing distance of about 6 inches, give or take, and that gives me a nice image. So if we line this up here and take the image, and I will show this on the video obviously, but we can get some very, very fine detail at 1:1 macro of the hairs of the bumblebee. And counting bumblebee hairs has always been a fascination for me when it comes to macro photography. How many hairs are on a bumblebee? But we're getting some very, very good detail. Now I have to adjust the setup just a little bit here in order to go to 2x macro. So I've adjusted things to compensate for the 2x macro. Now at 2x macro, obviously there is more of your subject exposed on your camera sensor. So lighting your subject at 2x macro can be difficult because the lens gets in the way. There's not enough light hitting the front of your subject, which is one of the reasons I have my flashes, my speed lights positioned the way they are. Directional at the subject and a little bit of fill light to give some proper exposure. So I'm nice and close here. And with the same image, I've adjusted closeness and I can get that much more detail on my subject. The quality of the image is very, very sharp. Like I said, I can count the hairs on this poor little bumblebee here quite nicely, and everything is very, very sharp. All in all, I do recommend the Laowa lens, particularly if you are used to manual focus lenses. They can be extremely fun to work with. And are great, particularly if you want to do photo stacking images. You just get that much more detail in them. Thank you very much for joining. Click here to subscribe to my channel. Click that like button. Share this video out. Click here for my video on macro lenses, and click here for a suggested video by YouTube. Thank you very much. And remember, in the macro world, you make little things a big deal.